The oxygen mask was fogging up with each labored breath as I felt my lungs struggling against the cancer that had spread throughout my chest. My trembling hand reached across the hospital bed rails toward my husband, Robert, and through the plastic tube delivering what little air I could still process, I whispered the words that would destroy our entire family. I need to tell you something that will change everything you believe about our marriage. I never loved you the way a wife should love her husband. But let me tell you the truth, I've been hiding for 35 years of marriage here in our hometown of Springfield, Missouri. The sterile smell of Mercy Hospital fills my nostrils as I struggle to breathe through this oxygen mask that's keeping me alive for just a few more days. My husband Robert is sitting in the blue vinyl chair beside my bed, his weathered hands holding the latest test results from Dr. Patricia Coleman, trying to understand why the chemotherapy isn't working anymore. My daughter Jennifer is standing by the window overlooking the parking lot where we've spent so many hours over the past 6 months. Her arms crossed as she tries to process what the doctors have told us about my final weeks. My son Michael is pacing near the door, still refusing to accept that his mother is dying at 65 years old. The IV dripping into my arm contains morphine for the physical pain shooting through my chest and abdomen, but there's no medication strong enough to numb the emotional agony I've carried every single day for over 3 decades. The heart monitor beside my bed beeps irregularly, matching the rhythm of a heart that's been broken not by cancer, but by the devastating choice I made when I was 22 years old. Through the hospital room window, I can see the Springfield skyline where I've lived my entire adult life, building what everyone thought was a beautiful marriage and family while secretly dying inside from regret and unfulfilled love. Before I tell you this heartbreaking deathbed confession, I really want to know where you're watching me from. Tell me in the comments what state you're from, and if you can, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This story needs to be heard by everyone who's ever had to choose between true love and practical security, because what I'm about to reveal will show you the devastating cost of marrying the wrong person and living a lie for 35 years. My name is Catherine Marie Walsh, and I've been married to Robert James Walsh for 35 years, 3 months, and 16 days. We met during my senior year at Southwest Missouri State University in 1982, when I was 22 years old and he was 25, already working as an accountant at a respected firm in Springfield. Everyone said Robert was perfect husband material, stable, reliable, kind, financially secure, and ready to settle down and start a family. He came from a good Catholic family, had no bad habits, treated me with respect, and made it clear from our 3rd date that he was looking for a wife, not just a girlfriend. My parents absolutely loved Robert from the moment they met him. My father, a mechanic who had struggled financially his entire life, was impressed by Robert's steady income and responsible nature. My mother, who had worried about me dating artists and musicians throughout college, was relieved that I had finally found someone who could provide security and stability. They saw Robert as the answer to their prayers, a good man who would take care of their daughter and give them grandchildren they could be proud of. The whole Springfield community respected the Walsh name and our picture-perfect marriage. We lived in a beautiful 2-story colonial house in the Roundtree neighborhood with a white picket fence and a garden that I tended every spring despite having no real passion for it. Robert coached our children's Little League teams and served as a deacon at St. Agnes Catholic Church. I volunteered at the elementary school and organized charity fundraisers for the hospital auxiliary. We looked like the ideal American family that everyone aspired to become. But what nobody knew was that I had settled for safety instead of following my heart, and every single day of our marriage felt like a slow death of my soul. Every time Robert kissed me goodnight, I closed my eyes and imagined someone else's lips. Every time he told me he loved me, I smiled and said it back while feeling absolutely nothing. Every anniversary, every family photo, every moment of what appeared to be marital happiness was built on the foundation of the biggest lie I've ever told. Because 3 months before I met Robert Walsh, I was deeply, desperately, completely in love with someone else. Someone who I should have married. Someone who would have made me truly happy for the rest of my life. Someone I gave up because I was too afraid to take a risk on love when security was being offered instead. I've carried this secret for 35 years, and every single day the weight of my wrong choice has crushed me a little bit more. Every night lying next to Robert, I've stared at the ceiling wondering what my life would have been like if I had been brave enough to follow my heart instead of my head. Every family gathering, every Christmas morning, every moment that should have been filled with joy has been tainted by the knowledge that I was living someone else's life instead of my own. What I'm about to confess will show you how devastating it can be to marry for the wrong reasons and spend decades pretending to be happy, while your soul dies a little more each day. It's about how I became a prisoner in my own life, trapped by a choice I made when I was too young and too scared to understand what real love meant. This crushing regret is literally killing me faster than the lung cancer spreading through my body. My oncologist, Dr. Patricia Coleman at Mercy Hospital, told me that the depression and emotional stress I've carried for decades has weakened my immune system and made it impossible for my body to fight this disease. She doesn't know that every shallow breath I take is weighted down by 35 years of living a lie and pretending to love a man who deserves so much better than what I was able to give him. It all started in the spring of 1982 during my senior year at Southwest Missouri State. But before I tell you about the love I walked away from and the devastating choice that ruined my life, I need you to understand how perfect everyone thought my life with Robert was. How nobody suspected that behind my smile was a woman who had been emotionally dead for over 3 decades. His name was Daniel Patrick Murphy, and he was everything that Robert Walsh was not. Daniel was 24 years old, 6 feet tall with dark hair and green eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul every time he looked at me. He was a graduate student in the English literature program, planning to become a writer and maybe teach at the university level. Daniel had grown up in a working-class Irish family in Boston, put himself through college with student loans and part-time jobs, and had dreams of writing novels that would change the world. Daniel was passionate, creative, spontaneous, and completely unpredictable. He would show up at my dorm room at midnight with coffee and want to discuss philosophy until sunrise. He wrote me love letters that were more beautiful than any poetry I had ever read. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt and feel more alive than I had ever felt in my entire life. When Daniel kissed me, every nerve in my body felt electrified. When he held me, I felt like I was home. We met in Professor Williams' American Literature course in January 1982, and by February we were inseparable. Daniel would walk me to every class, even though his graduate courses were on the other side of campus. We spent hours in the library, not studying, but talking about books and life and our dreams for the future. He introduced me to authors I had never heard of and challenged me to think about ideas that had never occurred to me. Daniel was brilliant in a way that made me want to be smarter, more curious, more alive. He could quote Shakespeare from memory, analyze complex philosophical concepts, and then turn around and fix my broken bicycle chain with the same confidence. He was everything I didn't know I wanted in a man until I met him. By March, we were talking about getting married after graduation. Daniel had been accepted to graduate programs at several universities where he could pursue his PhD in English literature. He wanted me to come with him, maybe get my master's degree in education and teach high school English while he worked on his dissertation. We made plans to move to Seattle, where he had received a fellowship at the University of Washington. Daniel painted a picture of our future that was uncertain but filled with adventure, intellectual growth, and deep emotional connection. We would live in a small apartment near campus, probably struggle financially for a few years while he established his academic career, but we would be together and we would be happy. He talked about the books he would write, the students he would inspire, the life we would build based on love and shared dreams rather than material security. I was completely captivated by this vision of our future together. For the first time in my life, I felt like I knew who I was and what I wanted. I wasn't just Catherine Walsh, the good Catholic girl from Springfield who was expected to find a nice husband and have babies. With Daniel, I was an intellectual, a dreamer, a woman capable of great love and passionate living. We were planning to get engaged at Christmas 1982 and married the following summer after graduation. Daniel had already started looking at engagement rings, even though he could barely afford them on his graduate assistant salary. He showed me a simple, solitaire diamond at a pawn shop downtown and asked if I would be happy with something modest until he could afford to buy me something better. I told him I would be happy with a ring from a Cracker Jack box as long as it came from him. But then reality hit in the form of my parents' practical concerns and fears about my future security. When I told my parents about Daniel and our plans to move to Seattle, they were horrified. My father couldn't understand why I would want to marry a man who had no steady income and unclear career prospects. "Writers don't make money, Catherine," he said. "You'll be struggling your whole life wondering how you're going to pay the rent and put food on the table." My mother was even more concerned about the practical aspects of my relationship with Daniel. "What happens if he never gets a tenure-track position?" she asked. "What if his books don't get published? What if you have children and can't afford to take care of them properly? Love doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart." They pointed out that Daniel came from a family with no money and no connections who couldn't help us if we ran into financial difficulties. They reminded me that academic careers were extremely competitive and uncertain, and that most aspiring writers never achieved financial success. They painted a picture of a future filled with stress, uncertainty, and financial struggle that terrified me. Meanwhile, Robert Walsh had started pursuing me with determined persistence. He asked me out repeatedly, even though I told him I was in a relationship with someone else. Robert was patient, respectful, and completely confident that he could offer me a better life than Daniel ever could. Robert painted a very different picture of our potential future together. He had a stable job with excellent benefits and clear advancement opportunities. He had already saved enough money for a down payment on a house. He could provide immediate financial security, health insurance, and a comfortable lifestyle that would allow us to start a family without worrying about money. "I can give you everything you deserve, Catherine," Robert told me during one of his persistent courtship attempts. "You'll never have to worry about paying bills or wondering where your next meal is coming from. I can take care of you the way a husband should take care of his wife." The pressure from my parents combined with Robert's unwavering pursuit started to wear down my resolve. They planted seeds of doubt about Daniel's ability to provide for me and our future children. They made me question whether love was enough to build a stable, secure life on. They convinced me that marrying Daniel would be selfish and irresponsible. In April 1982, 2 months before graduation, I made the worst decision of my entire life. I broke up with Daniel Murphy and started dating Robert Walsh seriously. The breakup with Daniel was the most devastating experience of my life up to that point. When I told him that I couldn't move to Seattle with him because I needed more security and stability than he could offer, he looked at me like I had ripped his heart out of his chest and thrown it on the ground. "Catherine, what we have is real," he said, tears streaming down his face. "What we feel for each other, people spend their whole lives looking for this and never find it. How can you walk away from something this perfect because of money?" I tried to explain about my parents' concerns and my fears about financial instability, but every word felt like lies even as I was saying them. Deep down, I knew I was making a terrible mistake, but I was too young and too influenced by other people's opinions to trust my own heart. Daniel begged me to reconsider, promised that he would find a way to provide for me, offered to give up his academic dreams and get a regular job if that's what it would take to keep me. But I had already convinced myself that love wasn't enough, that practical considerations had to outweigh emotional ones, that security was more important than passion. The last thing Daniel said to me was, "Someday you're going to realize that you gave up the best thing that ever happened to you, and it's going to be too late to get it back." He was absolutely right. Robert and I were engaged 3 months after Daniel and I broke up, and married in June 1983, exactly 1 year after I graduated from college. It was a beautiful Catholic wedding at St. Agnes Church with 200 guests, exactly the kind of traditional ceremony my parents had always dreamed of. Robert was so happy and proud, and I smiled through the entire day while feeling absolutely dead inside. Our honeymoon was a week in Branson, Missouri, staying at nice hotels and eating at fancy restaurants that Robert could easily afford. He was attentive, romantic, and completely devoted to making me happy. but every moment felt like I was acting in a play, pretending to be a happy bride while grieving the loss of my true love. When we returned from our honeymoon and moved into our new house in Springfield, I tried my best to embrace my role as Robert's wife. I decorated our home, learned to cook his favorite meals, and made friends with the other wives in our neighborhood. Everyone commented on what a perfect couple we made and how lucky I was to have found such a wonderful husband. But every single day, I thought about Daniel Murphy. I wondered where he was, whether he had finished his PhD, if he had found someone else to love, whether he ever thought about me. I imagined the life we would have had together, maybe struggling financially but intellectually stimulated and emotionally fulfilled in ways that all the security in the world couldn't provide. Robert was a good husband in every measurable way. He never raised his voice, never forgot an anniversary or birthday, never gave me reason to doubt his faithfulness or his love. He worked hard to provide for our family, helped with household chores without being asked, and treated me with consistent kindness and respect. When I got pregnant with Jennifer in 1984, he was over the moon with excitement about becoming a father. But I felt nothing. When Robert kissed me, I felt like I was kissing my brother. When he told me he loved me, the words felt hollow and meaningless. When we made love, I closed my eyes and pretended he was Daniel Murphy. I went through the motions of being a loving wife while feeling emotionally numb and disconnected from my own life. Our daughter Jennifer was born in March 1985, and our son Michael followed in September 1987. Robert was an incredible father, patient, involved, loving, and completely devoted to our children. He coached their sports teams, helped with homework every night, and never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference. He provided everything our family needed and most of what we wanted. But watching Robert love our children with such genuine joy and enthusiasm made my own emotional numbness even more painful. I loved Jennifer and Michael deeply, but I felt guilty that I couldn't love their father the way he deserved to be loved. They had a wonderful father who adored them, but their mother was emotionally absent even when she was physically present. I tried so hard to be a good wife and mother despite the emptiness I felt inside. I volunteered at their schools, organized play dates and birthday parties, maintained our home beautifully, and presented a perfect facade to the outside world. But every night when I lay down next to Robert, I felt like I was suffocating from the weight of living a life that wasn't authentically mine. The worst part was watching other couples who seemed genuinely happy and in love, knowing that I had given up my chance at that kind of connection. I would see wives looking at their husbands with genuine affection and desire, and I would feel jealous of something I had chosen to walk away from. If this story is breaking your heart and you want to hear what happened next, hit that subscribe button because the next part will show you just how devastating it can be to spend decades living with the wrong choice. In 1995, 13 years after I'd broken up with Daniel Murphy, I found him again completely by accident. I was in Barnes & Noble in Springfield, browsing the literature section while Jennifer and Michael played in the children's area, when I saw a name on a book spine that made my heart stop: Daniel P. Murphy. I pulled the book off the shelf with trembling hands and saw his author photo on the back cover. It was definitely him. Older, with some gray in his hair and lines around his eyes, but unmistakably the man I had loved and lost. The book was a novel called The Things We Leave Behind, and according to his biography, Daniel was now a professor of English literature at the University of Washington in Seattle and had published 3 critically acclaimed novels. He had achieved everything he had dreamed of when we were together. He had finished his PhD, gotten the tenure-track position he wanted, become the writer he had always planned to be. He was living exactly the life he had invited me to share with him, and I was standing in a bookstore in Springfield, Missouri, wondering what might have been. I bought his book and read it in one sitting that night after Robert and the children had gone to bed. It was beautiful, intelligent, emotionally complex. Everything I had known Daniel was capable of creating. But what devastated me was recognizing elements of our relationship woven throughout the story. There was a character who reminded me of myself, and reading about her felt like looking into a mirror that reflected all my regrets and lost possibilities. Over the next several years, I followed Daniel's career from a distance. I read every book he published, looked up interviews he gave, and even found his faculty page at the University of Washington. I learned that he had married another professor in 1990 and had 2 children. In interviews, he talked about his wife with obvious love and affection, describing her as his intellectual equal and creative partner. Reading about Daniel's happiness should have made me glad for him, but instead it made my own unhappiness even more unbearable. He had found love again and built the kind of life we'd planned together with someone else. Meanwhile, I was trapped in a marriage that felt more like a business partnership than a romantic relationship. I started having fantasies about what would happen if I reached out to Daniel. Maybe I could write him a letter explaining how I had never stopped thinking about him. Maybe we could meet for coffee when he came through Missouri on book tours. Maybe he would tell me that he had never gotten over me either and we could find a way to be together again. But I was a 35-year-old mother of 2 children married to a man who had never done anything wrong except not be Daniel Murphy. I couldn't destroy my family and abandon my responsibilities because I regretted a choice I had made 15 years earlier. So I suffered in silence, watching from afar as the man I should have married lived the life I should have had. Robert continued to be an exemplary husband and father, never knowing that his wife was emotionally unavailable because she was still in love with someone else. He planned romantic vacations that left me feeling empty. He gave me thoughtful gifts that I appreciated but didn't treasure. He told me constantly how much he loved me and how grateful he was for our life together. And every expression of his genuine happiness made me feel more guilty about my own deception. Our children grew up in what appeared to be a stable, loving home, but I worried constantly about the impact of my emotional distance on their development. Jennifer, now 28 and married herself, has always seemed to struggle with romantic relationships, unable to find the deep emotional connection she saw missing between her parents. Michael, 26 and recently engaged, has told me that he's afraid of marriage because he's not sure he knows what real love looks like. I tried marriage counseling with Robert several times over the years, but how could I explain to a therapist that the problem with our marriage was that I had never loved my husband without destroying him completely? I made up complaints about communication issues and intimacy problems, but the real issue was that my heart belonged to someone else and always had. The most devastating realization came on our 30th wedding anniversary in 2013. Robert had planned a surprise party with all our friends and family, and he gave a speech about how I was the love of his life and how grateful he was for 30 years of marriage to his best friend and soulmate. Everyone applauded and congratulated us on our beautiful, lasting love, and I stood there smiling while dying inside, knowing that I'd wasted 30 years of both our lives because I'd been too afraid to follow my heart when I was young. 3 months ago, when I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and given only a few months to live, my first thought wasn't about the treatments I might try or the time I wouldn't have with my family. My first thought was that I was going to die having never told Robert the truth about our marriage, and he would spend the rest of his life believing that we had shared a great love, when really he had been married to a woman who couldn't love him the way he deserved. I've spent the last 3 months in and out of the hospital, enduring chemotherapy treatments that aren't working and radiation that's only making me sicker. Robert has been by my side every single day, holding my hand during treatments, researching experimental therapies, and refusing to give up hope even when the doctors have made it clear that there's nothing more they can do. Yesterday, Dr. Patricia Coleman told us that I have maybe a week left, possibly less. The cancer has spread to my liver and brain, and my body is shutting down. Robert cried when she delivered the news, and Jennifer and Michael held each other and tried to be strong for their father. They've all been talking about how much they love me and how grateful they are for the time we've had together as a family. But I can't die without telling Robert the truth. He deserves to know that for 35 years he's been married to a woman who settled for him instead of following her heart. He deserves to understand why I was never able to love him with the passion and devotion he showed me every single day. He deserves to know that our entire marriage was built on my cowardice and his misplaced faith in a love that was never real. An hour ago, I asked Jennifer and Michael to give me some time alone with their father because I had something important to tell him. They're probably expecting me to share final wishes about my funeral or give him some beautiful last words about our life together. They have no idea that I'm about to destroy everything their father believes about our 35-year marriage. Robert is sitting beside my bed now, holding my hand the way he has through every difficult moment of the past 3 months. His eyes are red from crying, but he's trying to be strong for me in what he thinks are my final days. He's been telling me about all the wonderful memories we've shared, about how grateful he is that God brought us together, about how our love has been the foundation of everything good in his life. Catherine, he's saying now, stroking my hair with the same gentle touch he's used for 35 years. I know you're scared, but I want you to know that loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. You've made me happier than I ever thought possible. I look at this good man who has devoted his entire adult life to loving me, and I know that what I'm about to tell him will shatter his heart and change everything he believes about himself and our family. But I can't take this lie to my grave. Robert, I whisper, my voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. There's something I need to tell you about our marriage. Something I should have told you 35 years ago. His expression changes from loving concern to confused worry. What do you mean, sweetheart? What could you possibly need to tell me now? I take the deepest breath my failing lungs can manage and begin the most difficult conversation of my life. I need you to know that I married you for the wrong reasons. I was in love with someone else when we met, and I gave him up because I was afraid. I chose security over love, and I've regretted it every single day of our marriage. Robert's face goes completely white and his hand freezes in my hair. What are you saying, Catherine? I'm saying that you deserved a wife who loved you the way you loved me, and I was never able to be that woman. You've spent 35 years married to someone who cared about you and respected you, but was never truly in love with you. And I'm sorry, Robert. I'm so sorry for wasting your life. The heart monitor beside my bed starts beeping rapidly as my pulse increases from the stress of finally telling the truth. Robert pulls his hand away from mine and stares at me like I'm a stranger. Who? He asks quietly. Who were you in love with? His name was Daniel Murphy. He was a graduate student when I met him during my senior year of college. We were planning to get married and move to Seattle together, but my parents convinced me that he couldn't provide the security I needed. So I broke up with him and chose you instead. Robert stands up and walks to the window, his back to me. I can see his shoulders shaking, and I know I've just destroyed the foundation of everything he believed about his life. Did you ever love me? He asks without turning around. At all. I cared about you deeply. I respected you and appreciated everything you did for our family. But no, Robert. I was never in love with you the way a wife should be in love with her husband. I tried so hard to make myself feel what I thought I should feel, but my heart belonged to someone else. He turns around to face me, tears streaming down his face. 35 years, Catherine. 35 years of my life loving someone who didn't love me back. How could you do that to me? How could you let me believe we had something real? Because I was a coward, I whisper. Because I was too afraid to hurt you and too selfish to let you find someone who could love you the way you deserved. I thought I could learn to love you over time, but it never happened. Jennifer and Michael choose that moment to return to the room, and they immediately sense that something terrible has happened. Jennifer looks back and forth between her father's devastated face and my confession-weary expression. What's going on? She asks. Dad, why are you crying? Robert looks at our children, the two people we created together despite the fundamental lie our marriage was built on, and I can see him trying to decide how much of the truth to share with them. Your mother just told me something that changes everything I thought I knew about our family, he says quietly. And with those words, I realize that my deathbed confession hasn't just destroyed my husband's understanding of our marriage. It's about to shatter our children's entire concept of their family and their parents' relationship. The machines monitoring my vital signs are going crazy now as my body responds to the emotional trauma of finally telling the truth after 35 years of lies. I can feel my strength leaving me, and I know I don't have much time left. I'm sorry, I whisper to Robert, to Jennifer, to Michael, to everyone whose life I've damaged with my cowardice and deception. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to follow my heart when I was young, and I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to tell you the truth until now." Robert looks at me one last time, and I can see that the man who has loved me unconditionally for 35 years is gone. In his place is a stranger who feels betrayed and deceived by the woman he thought was his soulmate. "I hope it was worth it, Catherine," he says quietly. "I hope the security was worth both of us missing out on real love." As my vision starts to blur and my breathing becomes more labored, I realize that Robert is right. I chose safety over love, security over passion, and in doing so, I cheated both of us out of the happiness we could have had with other people. I wasted 35 years of my life pretending to be someone I wasn't, and I destroyed the life of a good man who deserved so much better than what I was able to give him. The last thing I see before losing consciousness is Robert walking out of the hospital room, leaving me to die alone with the devastating truth I should have told him 35 years ago.